Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro. It's time to review Ammonite, directed by Francis Lee and starring Kate Winslet and Saoirse Ronan. What a cast. The film is about Kate Winslet, whose character is a fossil.
There's probably a word for it that ends in ologist.
She unearths fossils from the beach and does her work on them. And that's what she does. And she lives a very sheltered life where that's just what she does. And her mother lives with her and she has no room for anything else. Saoirse Ronan's husband comes along and wants her to take walks with Kate Winslet because she is feeling depressed for reasons. And they form a connection that becomes a romantic one.
This is a very tender movie. It's all about micro expressions on people's faces and how they're falling in love. You've kind of seen it before, so you get what I'm saying. And it does it really well. The director is very good at this. Everything that happens on screen, physical, is just another way of communicating what's happening on the inside. If a character goes like this with their coat, it means that they're shutting themselves off from love. If a character takes off their hat, it's because they understand that, love, just like the wind, is cold, and they're more open to the potential of the breeze making them cold, which is what love could do to you if you get heartbroken. Just stuff like that. That was a very, very bad example.
Sometimes when movies try to do this, they can feel a little you're very quiet. I don't know people who are as quiet as you are and who don't express their feelings as much as you aren't. Yeah. And a lot of people are getting that from this movie, but I actually thought that the film justified why these characters would be that way in this context, in this world. I actually did buy it more than I was expecting to. And I mean, that's also just because Saoirse Ronan and Kate Winslet, they brought the game that you're hoping for. Maybe not the same game that you're expecting. They're playing very subtle, as you were saying, but they're both fascinating to watch. I thought this was very immersive, and I'm actually really glad I got to see it in the theaters. The cinematography, the sound design, production design, costumes, I got this very kind of cold world. I really felt oh yeah, it would be kind of empty to be in these poor rooms at this time, because usually we see castles and palaces.
It was a really good sensory experience.
Yeah,
them
the ocean
walking on the beach, hearing the ocean, just them looking at these fossils, brushing them off. It was a very sensually satisfying movie. And also the costumes were just really fun to look at. I wasn't yeah, whatever costumes. They feel like they're doing something for the characters. I don't know much about costumes and fashion, so that's good for me when I feel I'm engaged in that way. I like their hats. And the production design, the locations they found for the movie, oh my goodness. And obviously the cinematography, bringing those all to light. Very, very gorgeous movie. Would like to see it nominated for cinematography and costumes. Even score. I would be happy with a score nomination.
I would like to see a sound nomination.
But it might not get any of those nominations because, as you're about to find out, this is sort of an underwhelming movie by the end. For most of this movie, I was really into it. I was down with the subtlety. I liked the performances. But by the end, I was oh, it's just kind of saying this maybe? We actually had a debate about what the ending was, and I was right. I was correct.
I don't know if you're correct.
No, I was correct about what the last shot was.
I wasn't correct.
But here's the thing.
I don't know if you're correct, because you were oh, well, if the movie is saying what I think it's saying, then that's just a weird thing to say. And I'm saying maybe it's not trying to say that, because that would be weird.
This is the thing. There were two ways that we were kind of thinking, is it doing this or this? And to me, both of the ways would have been unsatisfactory. I didn't really either of them.
But it might not be either.
It doesn't really have a strong thesis, way to end it. It was a good exploration of a relationship on film building. But in the end, I just feel it didn't deliver.
As well crafted as it is, where does the movie bring itself? I don't know if it adds up to as much as it promises.
I think in the end, it really has a tough time setting itself apart and saying something interesting.
So the movie's just kind of about these characters slowly opening up and embracing each other. And then it kind of tried to say that it was about putting the person in a box. And I was oh, did that come from somewhere?
I agree. I don't know. It's almost asking the question of, to what extent is love putting somebody else in a box? And I'm that's not what love is, though.
That's not
nobody believes that.
Even in the movie's case, the movie didn't make a case that it was about that.
You could make a case for it, but
you could make a movie that feels like that's what it is. But this movie didn't feel like that.
And that's a very kind of like crude way to put it. Like, oh, it's about like putting in a box. There's a little more to it. It was weirdly like not that much in the end. I'm just gonna say what I think the movie is, but we're gonna put that at the end of the review and then give you a spoiler warning, okay? Until then, the performances, will they get nominated? Kate Winslet doesn't cry in this movie. Kate Winslet is so locked up. That's the point, though. So she's doing a good job. What a master actress. But will she get a nomination for it? I really don't think so after watching it. And it's not because she doesn't deserve it. It's just very subtle. Like, not even in the way that, like, McDormand, like, is the face of Nomadland and, like, oh my God, we have to nominate.
She's just like this Goomba, and she's just...
Yeah, she's a Goomba.
What do you want? I'm doing my work. It's actually really interesting to see that character who's so fucking locked up actually open up to somebody. She actually does an amazing job at it. And Saoirse Ronan is also like much more subtle than she usually is. Her character is very depressed.
Saoirse Ronan is essentially playing somebody who de-thaws, and you can see it very clearly. She does an excellent job communicating that that's what the character's going through just by like the way she is. What's good about this movie is they didn't do this shit. Okay? I'm not gonna say, I mean, yeah, it was just more accurate.
What people do.
More what people do, which is good.
So I feel like Francis Lee did a really great job focusing on how to craft really great performances in an immersive atmosphere. But he's so detail oriented. I wonder if to some extent he lost sight of a bigger picture. I will give Ammonite a 7 out of 10.
I still enjoyed the movie more than I thought I was probably going to. And it was kind of fun debating whether the ending like made sense or not. And so I would also give it a 7 out of 10. All right, this is a spoiler part, so if you don't want to know what happens, you can go away. The ending is Saoirse Ronan wants Kate Winslet to live with her. She's got it all worked out. And Kate Winslet's like, no, I need to be with my rocks. Like, that's what I do.
I related to that, though, because I was like...
No, yeah, that was totally realistic. I agree. So then Kate Winslet's like, goodbye. And then Kate Winslet goes to see the fossil that she unearthed at like age 11 that she's so proud of, and that she put so much care and time and effort into, which is like a metaphor for obviously how what happened with Saoirse Ronan. Saoirse Ronan is a fossil that she just, you know, de-thawed. They both are what the rock represents, I think is like what's clear, but they're just that, like in the same way that like the rock remains in the museum as like just this beautiful piece of art. That's also what the fate of these characters ultimately is. Like, that's what they are. This is the part where the movie just loses me. Like, is it saying that once you have like this beautiful gem, you can't actually like have it? It gets taken away from you. The relationship she has with that fossil, the fossil that she made when she's 11, that is now in the museum, is the relationship she will continue to have with Saoirse Ronan as just something to like reflect upon, but never to actually have.
Yeah, she's a drawing now. Remember how she's the drawing?
Oh yeah, and then she draws her.
Yes. Oh shit. There you go.
What do you mean, oh shit?
Wait, that's just Portrait Laid on Fire then. Well, because they're just drawing each other and they have the thing. Yeah, I just don't find that to be that satisfying of a conclusion that they're just like, well, you're a memory for me now. Exactly. And you're beautiful and I can think about you in my head. But
that is the ending of other films. But in this one, it feels like they're not changed at all by it.
I didn't like that ultimately Kate Winslet's character just succumbs to a sad world. A character who experiences something greater, then goes back, and that character is just like this memory fossil to her from now on until she dies. And I don't know how that's going to make her the rest of her life different. A lot of gay movies, the characters like don't get together in the end. It's almost a cliche in an indie gay movie at this point, like Call Me by Your Name, Portrait Laid on Fire. But in those movies, we have a final shot that tells us how the character is going to carry that person with them. In Call Me by Your Name, the ending is him looking into the warm fire and smiling while it's winter and cold and blue around him, right? This movie, the ending is Kate Winslet looking into an empty fireplace.
It's like someone who's closed off to the world, who has learned from experience that it's better to be closed off, and then in the end of the film still remains that way. It's strange. It feels like it's missing a fundamental like aspect of story in general. And if I'm interpreting the movie wrong, then you could please comment and just give a spoiler warning.
Visually and like just filmmaking wise, it was like really fucking good. Yeah, just story-wise, it came up short, but I can see this director like hitting a different story out of the park. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
How hard is it to love you?